Some killers don't sneak in from the shadows. They grow right in front of us. A grandson raised by his grandparents who loved him. A dentist with a perfect smile and a picture-perfect family. A mentally ill man wandering a city that looked the other way. A drifter riding freight trains for decades. A young extremist who wore his hatred on his own face. They weren't unknown monsters. They were already there, on our streets, in our families, in our communities, long before anyone realized how dangerous they really were. Tonight, we're looking at 5 cases where the signs were there, but the ending was still deadly. This is Hidden Threats, 5 killers nobody stopped in time.
You could see what he believed before he said a single word. John DiTullio Jr. wore his ideology like a uniform, a swastika tattooed on his face, barbed wire and expletives inked into his neck, symbols of white supremacy carved straight into his skin. By 24, he moved through Newport Richey, Florida, with a warped certainty. Us versus them, allies versus enemies, hate versus everyone else. In 2006, that hate turned into action. DiTullio targeted 2 people, Christopher King, just 17 years old, and Patricia Wells, a woman who had allowed a man DiTullio's extremist group despised to stay in her home. He broke in with a knife. Christopher was stabbed to death. Patricia survived, badly wounded, carrying the scars for the rest of her life. Neighbors would later recall screams slicing through the quiet, chaos that ended with police and paramedics flooding the street. From the beginning, this wasn't a mystery. The attack was aimed, the motive tied to neo-Nazi ideology, and the man suspected wore that ideology on his face. But those same tattoos created a legal problem. In court, prosecutors said his ink showed motive, proof of hate. Defense argued the tattoos would prejudice the jury before they even heard a word of evidence. The judge made an unusual decision. Court-ordered makeup. Every day, state-paid makeup artists covered his face and neck to hide the swastika and slurs. Jurors saw a cleaned-up version of DiTullio. Only at sentencing did he wipe off the makeup and stare at the room with the full set of tattoos on display. The first trial ended in a mistrial. In 2010, at the second trial, the state presented witness testimony placing him at the scene, forensic evidence tying him to the crime, context of his involvement with a local neo-Nazi group. DiTullio claimed he'd been framed by other extremists. The jury didn't agree. They took less than half an hour. Verdict: guilty of first-degree murder for Christopher King, guilty of attempted murder for Patricia Wells. They spared him the death penalty. He received life in prison without parole. Over the next decade, his lawyers appealed. 2013, 2019, and again in 2025. All were denied. Today, John DiTullio Jr. sits in a Florida prison, his face still inked with hatred, his beliefs apparently intact, his freedom gone for the rest of his life. He's become a case study in how ideology drives violence and how a face can be a confession long before a crime is ever committed.
They called him Crazy Mike. He wasn't tied to any address, any job, or any neighborhood. His world was the railroad. Michael Elijah Adams grew up in Michigan, restless and drawn to the tracks. By 14, he'd left home, hopping freight trains with a backpack, a knife, and a growing taste for violence. He came under the wing of a loose, transient group, the Freight Train Riders of America, or FTRA, a network of drifters rumored to enforce their own brutal code across the rails. Over nearly 30 years, Adams rode from California to Virginia, from Oregon to Texas, living in and around rail yards. He claimed he killed 16 men in that time. Troublemakers, he called them. Other drifters, he said, needed killing. Most of those deaths never properly investigated. written off as accidents, fights, or unknown assaults near the tracks. Only a few made it to court. In Roseville, California, after a fight near a rail yard, a man was found beaten to death beside the tracks. Witnesses pointed to Adams. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, showing no remorse. Later, in Placer County, he was tied to another killing. John Owens, another rail rider, found dead near the tracks. In 2010, Adams got 15 years to life. In Henrico County, Virginia, the body of Robert Allen Chasser, 52, was found near a freight line, brutally beaten. Adams entered an Alford plea to capital murder, not admitting guilt, but accepting conviction. He was sentenced to life without parole. Even behind bars, Adams bragged. At least 16 people, he said, all men who crossed him. Investigators across multiple states quietly re-examined unsurfaced drifter deaths, assaults by rail lines, cases with similar methods, blunt force, close-range attacks, makeshift weapons. Then, in 2019, everything broke into the open again. In Peoria, Arizona, Adams, now in his 50s, walked into a convenience store. Outside, 17-year-old Elijah Al-Amin stood listening to rap music. Adams later told police the music made him feel unsafe. Moments later, he slit Elijah's throat. A teenager, killed in seconds for playing music. The crime shocked the country. A random, racist attack. A young life ended for no reason at all. Before that case could go to trial, in 2021, Michael Elijah Adams was found dead in his jail cell, ruled a suicide. He left behind no real explanation, no remorse, just a scattered trail of bodies along America's railways, some named, many not. To law enforcement, he was a drifter, a serial killer, a man the system never fully caught up with, until it was far too late. On paper, it looked like the safest place for him to be. Jadarius J. Sean Jones grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, in the home of his grandmother Anita Hardy, 58, his grandfather Gregory Merritt, 63. They raised him like a son, roof over his head, food on the table, rules they hoped would keep him out of trouble. But by 18, something in him was unraveling. Family described him as withdrawn, quick to anger, unpredictable. He would pace through rooms, argue under his breath, swing between polite and distant, then suddenly cold. By the summer of 2023, the tension inside the Hardy Merritt home was thick. Arguments over rules, money, discipline. Relatives said it felt like walking on eggshells. Things that used to blow over now simmered and stayed. In the days before the killings, Jones stopped talking to most family, spent hours alone, posted vague, angry messages online. Outside, the house looked quiet. Inside, resentment was building towards something irreversible. Just after midnight in August 2023, neighbors heard a series of sharp pops, 10 in total. Then silence. When police arrived, Anita Hardy, Gregory Merritt, and Luther Lewis Williams, 44, a family friend visiting, were all dead from gunshot wounds. Scattered around them, 9mm shell casings, evidence of deliberate, controlled firing. Witnesses had seen a black car speeding away, a young man wearing white sneakers and a fanny pack. Detectives moved fast. Surveillance footage showed Jones near the home. Shoe prints and blood matched his sneakers. A discarded fanny pack contained items belonging to Luther Williams. Gunshot residue was found on Jones's clothing. Confronted with the evidence, he denied it at first, then admitted to the shootings, offering almost nothing beyond, "I snapped." In court, prosecutors laid it out. A domestic dispute that turned into a triple execution. No forced entry, No unknown intruder, only an 18-year-old with a gun and a grudge. The defense pointed to his age, emotional instability, and claimed it was a sudden rage, not planned murder. But the scene told a different story. Multiple shots, multiple victims, no sign of a chaotic struggle. The jury took less than a day. Verdict: guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. The judge handed down life in prison without parole, effectively 999 years. Jones barely reacted. No apology, no explanation. 3 loved ones gone, 1 teenager alive but legally buried. The house on Jacksonville's west side is quiet now, and what's left is a question that hovers over every family argument you ever think could never go that far. How do you see it coming when the danger is the person you raised?
On Chicago's South Side, people are used to bad news, but July 7, 2010 still stands out. That afternoon, Officer Thor Soderberg, 43, finished his shift at a Chicago police facility in Inglewood. He walked toward his car, off-duty, unarmed except for his holstered service weapon. Nearby, Bryant Brewer, in his early 20s, was wandering, pacing, talking to himself. He'd grown up in that same city, bounced between relatives, in and out of treatment centers, diagnosed with schizophrenia years before. People who knew him said sometimes he was calm and polite, other times paranoid and agitated, convinced people were after him. In the months before that day, he'd stopped taking medication, stopped sleeping regularly, told family the police were watching him. On that hot afternoon outside the station, his fear latched itself onto one man in uniform. Witnesses later described Brewer circling the lot, watching officers, agitated, aimless. Then, suddenly, he lunged at Officer Soderberg. In a brief, violent struggle, Brewer wrestled the officer's gun away, pulled the trigger. Soderberg was shot multiple times. He died in the parking lot. Brewer then turned and fired at other officers who were rushing to help. They fired back, hitting and capturing him. The entire encounter took less than 2 minutes. Inside Brewer's belongings, no manifesto, no clear plan, just the confusion he carried everywhere he went. He told detectives, "They were after me." To him, the shooting wasn't murder. It was self-defense against enemies only he could see. The case took 7 years to reach trial. Endless psychiatric evaluations, arguments about whether he was competent to stand trial, debates over insanity versus accountability. The defense said he was legally insane. His schizophrenia was so severe he couldn't understand his actions. Prosecutors showed he took the gun, fired it, shot at responding officers, tried to escape. All signs, they argued, that he understood enough to know what he was doing and that it was wrong. The courtroom was divided. On one side, a silent, vacant-eyed Brewer. On the other, rows of uniformed officers, watching the man who killed one of their own. In 2017, the judge ruled guilty of first-degree murder, no insanity acquittal, no diminished responsibility. Brewer was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He now lives medicated, monitored, locked away in an Illinois prison. His case is a brutal intersection of untreated mental illness, public safety failures, and a system that only truly intervened after someone was dead. A broken mind, a stolen gun, and one more name added to Chicago's long list of fallen officers.
If you looked at the family photos, you'd never guess. Dr. James Tolliver Craig, a polished dentist in Aurora, Colorado, 6 children, a neat suburban home, a seemingly devoted wife, Angela. Neighbors saw the perfect family. Church on Sundays, kids' sports, friendly waves from the driveway. Behind that image, his dental practice was failing.
Debts were piling up. He'd secretly filed for bankruptcy, and he was having an affair with a Texas orthodontist he met at a conference. By early 2023, the pressure was crushing him, and instead of facing it, he started making a plan. On March 6, 2023, Angela started feeling dizziness, nausea, blinding headaches. Her husband, the dentist she trusted with her health, mixed her a protein shake. Hours later, she was in the hospital. Doctors were confused. Her tests looked normal, but her body was shutting down. She recovered, briefly. Then it happened again. Each time she got sick, she'd had one of Craig's health shakes. On her third collapse, she was placed on life support. While Angela lay in a hospital bed, doctors started to feel something was off. Craig sat in the waiting room, on his phone, sending messages that didn't match the drama unfolding a few doors away. The police were called. They pulled his browser history, order records, clinic computer logs. They found searches like, how to make someone go to sleep and never wake up? Is arsenic detectable in autopsy? How to order potassium cyanide? They found orders for arsenic, February 27th, orders for potassium cyanide just days before one of Angela's crashes, shipped not to his home, but to his dental office, under chemical supplier accounts he'd created. When they searched the clinic, they found a box of cyanide, partially used, hidden in a cabinet. At the same time, phone records showed ongoing, intimate messages with his mistress in Texas. He told her he was trapped, promised a future once things were over, booked flights, made plans, all while his wife was dying. On March 19, 2023, with Angela still on life support, Aurora police walked into the hospital and arrested him. The charge? He knowingly and deliberately poisoned his wife. Forensic testing confirmed arsenic and cyanide in Angela's system. Prosecutors built a tight timeline. February 27th, arsenic ordered. Early March, cyanide ordered and delivered. March 6th through 16th, Angela repeatedly ill after shakes. March 16th to 17th, Craig searches undetectable poisons, texts mistress about starting new life. March 17th, Angela declared brain dead. The picture they painted, a man drowning in debt, in love with someone else who saw murder as a way out. Craig's defense argued the chemicals were for legitimate dental experiments. The searches were misinterpreted. He was a husband watching his wife die, not a poisoner. But every click, every purchase, and every text said otherwise. As of 2025, James Tolliver Craig sits in custody in Arapahoe County, faces a potential life sentence if convicted, still claims he's innocent. The woman who trusted him most, the one he vowed to love and protect, never got to hear the truth from him. The evidence may end up saying it for him.
John DiTullio Jr., Michael Elijah Adams, Jadarius Jones, Bryant Brewer, James Tolliver Craig. 5 very different lives. A man who tattooed hate across his own face. A drifter who treated murder as cleanup work. A teenager who killed the grandparents who raised him. A schizophrenic man ignored until he took an officer's gun. A dentist who turned a protein shake into a weapon. They don't look alike. They don't think alike. But they have one thing in common. There were signs. The ideology no one wanted to take seriously. The decades of unexplained violence along the rails. The family tension everyone hoped would blow over. The untreated psychosis that kept being cycled in and out of the system. The secret debts, the secret affair, and the search history no wife ever saw. And still, in every case, it took a body before anyone truly acted. If you've watched this far, you're not just here for shock. You're trying to understand how ordinary lives twist into something lethal, and why the people around them couldn't or wouldn't stop it in time. If you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, subscribe to the channel, hit like so more people see these stories, and tell me in the comments, which case hit you hardest, and do you think it could have been prevented? Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself. Pay attention to the people around you. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones nobody ever thought to fear.